So let's push the pause button and do a little exegesis of ourselves, shall we? Okay, line 1, the worship's choice line. It reminds us how deeply evangelicals have been commodified and market-driven. Market-driven language pervades contemporary evangelicalism at every turn. Now, this democratizing spirit tacitly assumes that there are no higher points of reference for establishing the shape and practice of the church, ministry, and worship than popular opinion and the will of the majority. Even the church where I attend, I had to put up with the famous, ubiquitous worship preference survey. The premise of all marketing is that the consumer's needs are king and the customer is always right. And yet, as David Wells has so well pointed out in his book, God in the Wasteland, these are the very points the gospel refuses to concede. We are not always right and we're not king, in case you haven't looked. There are surely, of course, many good reasons for starting a contemporary worship service. What concerns me is the lack of theological reflection in the process and what might be done to compensate for the potential losses. Separating generations over worship just might be cutting the very relational tie between older and younger, which is so crucial for discipleship. Providing worship style options just might be reinforcing that worship is somehow for us, that is, to meet our needs. Often in the ensuing discussion about styles of music, we're so easily to forget about the content of the worship that's before us in the first place. Evangelicals are, of course, masters at dodging any criticism that we ourselves could ever be co-opted by culture. We disguise our lack of theological reflection by our constant commitment to relevance or saying that we are reaching people, quote, where they are. Of course, who would deny that the church needs to have a profound understanding of where people are? That is not the problem. We are quite adept at measuring where people are culturally, but we are at best careless in any sustained reflection theologically on where they should be culturally. So, for example, if the wider culture has become apathetic about ritual, tradition, symbolism, poetic expressions, the value of history, the necessity of intergenerational relationships, then no problem, we say. It is the evangelical version of the prime directive to always adapt to culture. But what if these very prejudices are actually part of the cultural malaise to which the church is called to provide a stunning alternative? How easily we seem to forget, and this is what the Protestant liberals forgot, that the gospel doesn't need our help in being made relevant. The gospel is always relevant. It is we who need to be made relevant to the gospel. If we spend as much time really immersing ourselves into apostolic orthodoxy as we do trying to capture predictive sociological expertise on the latest cultural wave, if I can use Thomas Oden's phrase, we would be far better off. We've accepted almost without question certain definitions of success and what a successful church looks like. However, as I told last year's graduating class in my charge, if the cross teaches us anything, is that sometimes God does his greatest redemptive work under a cloak of failure. Only sustained theological reflection is able to penetrate and unmask the pragmatic, market-driven assumptions which largely go unchecked in today's evangelical churches.